Hey, is this thing on? Are we recording? Can I get a tech person? Oh, for the love of ed tech.
Today, we're talking to Dr. Tonya Sanders, Associate Director of Academics at NWOET. Tonya, thank you for joining us. We are so glad to have you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. So, we always start our podcast the same way with all of our guests, talking about how you ended up where you are in your journey into education. So, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing?
Sure. Well, I ended up in education because I loved my third grade teacher, Miss Sinkner. She was amazing. And I taught for, 10 years, actually secondary education, 7 through 12, English language arts, reading, video production, communications, that kind of stuff. But I was kind of debating on whether I should share how I got into this job because it was kind of like a sour grapes kind of thing. They were having a new position that was grant funded at the district that I was teaching at. And all of us were best friends and all of us worked in technology at that school. And they gave it to the person that didn't have a degree in it. But all of us applied for it. So like it was weird that all of us applied anyways, because we were all friends. But I was just a little kind of hurt that I didn't get the position. It was an integration specialist, weirdly. And at the time, the friend of mine saw in the newspaper that there was this, I don't even know what it was labeled at, maybe as an educational technology specialist in the Crescent News, and actually physically gave it to me as like a cutout, like a piece of paper. And so I called and interviewed, and that was the only job I went for. And I'm a person of habit. I don't like to leave something. And it was in BG, and I had to drive, and I lived about an hour away from BG. And I would have to work, all year round. And I was just like, is this really worth it? Because I was, hurt because I didn't get that position.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it ended up being great because, here I am 20, 21 years later, not regretting a minute of coming to this position. So that's kind of how I came about it. And I wouldn't have been able to do this position if it weren't for the district I was teaching in. They had amazing technology coordinator, and I loved doing video editing. And anytime anything came out, since we were really good friends, he would let me experiment and he would buy anything I wanted. So he got me Adobe Premiere on the Mac when
Mhm.
it used to be on the Mac. And then he got
Yes.
me all this extra equipment. It was amazing, the things that he set me up with. And so that kind of started my love of technology. So it was pretty awesome.
How can we build relationships with technologies?
Well, so when I started my research, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that my boss wanted me to. His big joke was, I don't care if you get a PhD in basket weaving. He goes, you need a PhD. And so I was like, okay. So I got into media and communications and started taking some really good classes in regards to gamification in instructional design. And I read a book from Jane McGonigal called Reality is Broken. It's really a good book. And I don't like, this probably sounds awful coming from an English teacher. I really don't like to read unless it really gets my attention. And probably shouldn't have said that, but yeah,
Yeah.
it got my attention, and I couldn't put the book down. So I thought, you know what, this is what I want to do my research about. And the whole reason I wanted to do engagement was because at the time my son was like in second or third grade, and he was going to go to school for the first school day. And I said, are you excited? And he's like, no. And it was
Oh,
first day. And I was like, what
man.
can we do to change that dynamic? And
Right.
even the twins now, even my young boys now, they don't want to go to school. And I'm like, how can we change that people are like excited about learning? And then so this book made me think about this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how that plays in our lives. And so I thought all of it was going to be about gaming, and and having fun and playing. So a lot of my research was done on that. But eventually, when I started to put things together in sections and then interview people, I started to find out it was a different kind of intrinsic, extrinsic motivation was the connection and the relationship thing. And so the first one was, and I thought about this the last couple days with all the stuff that I'm doing outside of my job. Connections and relationships are super important to me, and I can only say that's true to me, but I can't imagine other people don't want to have connections to what they're doing. So like when I go to the doctor, I want to feel connected to my doctor. When I have a realtor, I want to feel connected to my realtor. And I'm
Mhm.
overly obsessed with that. I mean, I've gotten rid of so many people professionally outside of my life, like professionals like a plumber or something like that, because I just
Yeah.
didn't like the way they connected with me. And so the same thing is true for school is we have to feel connected to something. So when you walk in, feel connected to your principal when they greet you at the door or connected to your teacher. I go in and I model for teachers a lot. And so I'm interacting with students all the time. And the one thing that I'm not an elementary teacher, but when I'm in the elementary, the thing that connects me to the students, because I'm definitely not comfortable with that grade level. I'm comfortable at that age in my own house, but not outside the world. But basically, hearing them and then letting them know that I heard them. And so there was this little kid in first grade. I was teaching them iPad management, like how they're supposed to be able to touch it and use it and not abuse the iPad at first grader. And he told me about his chickens. And so every time I saw him in the hallway, I was like, "How are your chickens?" And that boy would light up. And like he would pay attention to me no matter what I was saying because I knew he had chickens and I made it relevant to him. And then that leads us to the second part is that not only having a connection to the person that's teaching you and talking to you, but also instead of saying, there's three chickens and you buy two more chickens or three
Mhm.
apples and two apples, you say, I have three chickens and then we wanted two more chickens. And now this kid's paying attention because he's like, I love chickens. Um,
Who
so
doesn't?
exactly, yeah. So a connection to each other personally and connection to the curriculum or making it relevant to you is that really good connection. We are emotional human beings and emotions drive us. So if I feel connected to something, I'm going to be more vested, which is true about a
Yeah.
lot of things. So
Mhm.
Yeah. So, how can we create meaningful learning experiences using tech?
yeah, that's the crazy part because after I had that discovery, I wrote a course for NWOET that was called Making Connections and building relationships. Well, my boss obviously was like, it has to include technology, right?
Technology.
And I'm like, yes, I understand that. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay, yes, I will connect it. But I mean, I love technology, but the one thing that I love teaching is social emotional learning. That's a huge part of social, and you can teach social emotional learning, building relationships through technology with like doing an autobiography project that includes videos. So you do a video edit of your first vacation that you've ever taken or the most memorable event when you were, in school or something like that. And the one thing that I teach, just taught it a couple months ago, was the building relationships with Google Sites. So you have this like interview process, and that could be using technology with that as well. In my class, we used Google Docs and used the voice typing feature, and they paired up, and the teachers asked another teacher two questions off of this PDF that I had for them, and then they built websites around that person. So it's almost like you're honoring that person from talking to them, asking them questions, documenting that information, and then building something to represent them that you know them. And then what we do after that is all the websites are available to, like, for instance, if I'm doing this in an elementary classroom, the students are doing it. So the students are building relationships with each other. Then we share that information in the classroom. And so now I'm connected as a teacher to those students. And then we can even take it to the next level because the communication and the connections doesn't stop with just student to student or teacher to student. It has to go to teacher to administration, school district to community. So there's all these connections that are really important at education, and technology can help us do that, whether it's sending an email or an electronic newsletter, a documentation of some sort. Technology can connect us in meaningful ways, and we just have to understand that that connection is important to everybody. So it doesn't just stop at student to student or teacher to student. It's got to go spread out all around the whole district.
Yeah, well, and sometimes I think those simple things get lost a little bit because the whole like simplicity of it. So you're using technology, but you're not, I don't know. I guess one, it has intention behind it, but two, it's meaningful and it's not like where the technology is the focus. Do you know what I mean?
Right, and the tool should never be the focus.
Yeah.
The curriculum should always drive the tool. That's my first message to anyone that takes my class is that if you have to force it to work within your curriculum, then that's not the
Mhm.
tool for you. And I've had teachers before say, be panicky. Tonya, we're having this Chromebook and we're going to go one to one. I have to use it, and I have my daily math lesson. And how am I going to use it with my daily math lesson? And I said, well, do what do you like about your math lesson? And she's like, I like the fact that the kids use colored pencils and I like the way they interact with and get the piece of paper. I said, then don't use technology for it. Oh, whew, she was relieved, and she's like, "But this other thing, it would be simplified if it was digitized and put
Mm.
online and use the Chromebook with and this program." And so I always tell the teachers to never complicate or stress over using technology, that the technology, that's why it's called integration. It should seamlessly be used within your curriculum. It shouldn't be, driving your curriculum. It should be supporting. It should be supporting it, not forcing anything from it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because that's a good reminder for everyone
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
when it comes to technologies. If you like this podcast, check out our latest, Minds Over Media, a collaboration between SOITA and the University of Cincinnati, delving into diverse aspects of media literacy. Uncover the power of media literacy through insightful conversations and gain valuable insight from esteemed scholars and dedicated educators navigating this complex landscape. Check it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Teachers, you can now earn contact hours toward grad credit for listening to the podcast.
Visit fortheloveofedtech.org for more information.
How would you say that we can maintain those authentic connections, like your little chicken guy, um, like in a technology saturated world? So we know that too, a lot of times, like our students are leaving us and they're on technology all the time. And then sometimes we feel as though they're always on technology when they're in school as well. And we want to create some authenticity, but two,
Mhm.
just like with the video games, we understand that sometimes those skills and opportunities that those offer are meaningful. So I
Right.
maybe the question is about balance.
Yeah, I mean, originally when I started my dissertation, my advisor wanted me to do device time because I mean, everybody's got their opinions about device time. Other people have opinions about video games, which a lot of my research was
Mhm.
about video games too. And I disagree with all of it because I think video games are good. I think using devices is good. I think using technology is good. I really had a question about AI at first. I refused to use it because I felt like it was taking away the authenticity of us and our creativity of what we need to do. And I think the answer to your question is it's it's difficult to answer that because I have several different ways of solving it. Is classroom management. So if you're aware of something, this is the boring answer, but if you're aware that something could impede or hurt your students in any way, then you need to manage that time. And my happy answer is instructional design does that for you. And I think that's the way we need to look at technology as well, is when we're using technology, are we having the students just sit there in silence? Okay, let's use the analogy
Right.
of a busy family at a restaurant, or a restaurant at a family at a restaurant, and they want to have some peace and quiet, so they give their kids a cell phone. That's not the answer to technology. The technology is, like if we're sitting at dinner, we don't have our phones out. If someone asks a question about something, I might yell out, hey, and I don't want to get Google riled up now. I'll say, hey, Google, how did, how did they upgrade Planet Coaster for the 2.0 upgrade, or something like that. And because we're
Yeah.
talking about it, but we use technology to keep the conversation going, not to silence the conversation or bury the attention of the students in it. So instructional design does that. So a flipped environment is perfect for interacting with materials and technology and integrating the teacher's professional expertise in that. I do love project-based learning where the students are continually working on something together and they use technology as a tool to find answers, build it, do the research, whatever they need to do. So I think instructional design is the fun answer. And that's why I love teaching instructional design so much.
Well, and this may touch on the project-based learning, but can you talk about the importance too of connection to the curriculum or what's being taught?
Yeah, I think technology helps with that a lot. Technology definitely can help the relevancy of a topic to a student because you have virtual tours, you have VR technology that's out there, we can Skype or and look at me old school, we can Zoom or Google Meet with someone in regards to, an expert, all the way across the world and talk to them. It's brought us closer. I mean, when distance learning came out, all that technology came out, everybody was so excited. Now we can have, a meeting with the guy at the zoo, and we don't have to get in the bus and take, 30 kids to the zoo. But I think that I'm probably getting off topic a little bit here, but I think we can make things relevant by using technology because technology is getting so real. And I think that we're smart enough as teachers to navigate that in the classroom, but also to challenge our students to look at what technology is giving us and decide if it's an appropriate answer, if it's a sufficient answer. So, but yeah, I hope I answered your question there. But yeah, that's what I would say. I would say that you can get the relevancy of what you're doing. So if I'm working on tangent and cotangent in my classroom, then I can, find some simulation that will show the student the relevancy of that instead of just answering it. For instance, when I was in
Right.
school and doing trigonometry, perfect. I was just like, okay, I got to get an A. That's my motivation, that extrinsic motivation. I had no intrinsic motivation to be good at that other than a grade. And then when I graduated, I had to get a construction job and we were building stairs and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's blah blah or whatever." And he's like, "Yes, yeah, and but so yeah, I think relevancy and connecting people to the curriculum, technology can have a huge part of that. I've never really considered teaching a class on that, but now you got my brain rolling on a class that I could teach with that.
Swirling. Well, because I think that comes up so often anymore. And like now that
Yeah.
kids are in touch with so many different things, it is kind of like, well, when am I ever going to use this? Or why am I doing this? Like,
Yeah.
and if you can answer that question with real world experiences or examples or things that they can try or do, because I feel like those things that if you think back in school, the things that you remember are those experiences or things that kind of hit on your loves.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. Well, and also, when I started my research, there was some I guess I would call radical thinking that that came in one of the articles. It was actually kind of an old article, is that the structure of school should be altered, and that would be instructional design, of course, and
Mhm.
my twins went to a Montessori style school for their early years of school because yeah, it doesn't matter why. But anyways, they went and and their and the instruction was great because they had this freedom. I mean, there's no structure to it, but there was
Mhm.
like semi there was semi structure to it because some people think of Montessori as you go in and you get to choose what you want to do. Yes, that is true. What you get to do and the manipulatives and the stuff that surrounds these kids allows
Mhm.
them to choose what they want. But we were lucky to have teachers that would, because our one kid would have stayed in the peace corner all week, all day. He would have stayed and read a book in the, on the beanbag chair with a peace rose, but basically you can't do that. You got to learn, you got to, and so they would kindly move them to another space to be able to learn, you know, math, reading, whatever. And both of our kids, I attribute to their high reading level and their success in academics to one, going to that Montessori school and having the freedom to explore at the pace and the rate that they wanted with minimal structure, and two, to video
Mhm.
games. They played Minecraft as very young kids, and they're in third grade, and both of them are at above a seventh grade reading level, and that is because of Minecraft, my opinion. But they were coding and writing things in Minecraft before they were like
Mhm.
5, 6 years old. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the instructional design has a huge part of all of that. I think we need to minimize the structure of this, and this. I think you have to have goals, but I don't know if we have to have, this will probably get me smacked here, but standards and benchmarks to pace ourselves. I think some of us do, but some of us don't need those guidelines. We just need this goal of moving forward to something. And I
Yeah.
don't think there's a teacher that doesn't have goals to move towards something, but yeah, but I think it needs, schools need to be less structured and more open to allowing students to discover. I'm a big supporter of discovery learning, discovery
Mhm.
education. I really, not the product. I don't,
Right.
that's,
Right.
but for
Mhm.
students to kind of explore on their own and discover the places that they want to learn and want to go, and they'll learn those skills that they need to know to move forward when necessary.
I know Michael Moore is controversial among people, but Michael Moore has a documentary called Where Should We Invade Next? And so basically he claims different
Okay.
aspects of different countries that he would like to bring to America.
I heard him talking on the radio once about this, and I think he was the one that said something about gamification has been and maybe it was Finland or Norway. I feel like it was Norway or something like that. But the United States is way late to the game on
Oh,
gamification.
yeah.
And that was all my research. And I remember hearing him say something about like there's all these amazing things happening in other countries. So okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. But yes, I'm
Mhm.
familiar with that.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, but it's like yeah, that it's like that idea of, like, kinda ditching the traditional, like, school day
Yeah.
and, yeah, looking at things it is just looking at things different and how Finland they were behind in the world standings,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and they decided to shift things, and then magically, they are no longer behind, but we still are.
Yes. Yes.
Because too, especially when kids are young, that's how they learn.
Exactly. And I remember when I started doing my research, because I thought I was going to be doing it on play and how play is important. We went to a couple, like whatever the Cincinnati one was, the children's hands-on stuff. And I just
Mhm.
stood back. We would let our kids just play. It was the water thing where they have all the things and they were just playing with it. And this one kid was not playing with it right. And the mom and dad stepped in and said, "This is how you use it." And I was like, I'm learning so much from just standing here, from the way that whether we step up because we don't want our kid to look like the not smart one in front of everybody because they're exploring something differently. So then we navigate them toward this like normal way of conforming to the way society uses that toy or uses water or,
Mhm.
and I think we're always kind of moving our kids in the direction that we think society is observing them as. So we don't want to be judged. So like standing in front of all those parents, the kids are playing and that parent didn't want their kid to be seen as the kid who didn't know how to play with the boat in the water. um,
Mm.
yeah, so I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we restrain our kids from learning, exploratory learning, because we're because of our own issues, because of our own things. And that was the toughest thing for me with the Montessori learning is my boys would get themselves dressed every morning, and every morning one of them had either their pants on backwards, their shirt on backwards, a shoe on the wrong feet. And I was told that's the Montessori way, or that's the way they're going to learn. And it took me a long time to be okay with them walking out with a shirt wrong side out or whatever. But yeah, they need to explore that on their own. And now they're 9 and they don't walk out with their shoes on the wrong feet anymore. I don't know what I was worried about, but yeah. So, I mean, learning has to be from them. And those are, like you said, very crucial moments of learning at that age.
And I don't know how you shift our education system because sometimes it seems like too big of a beast.
It is, it is. And, I've like this instructional design kick that I've been on for the last 8 years, trying to really push it out to school districts. It's tough because school districts will say, well, I've been teaching, a teacher will say, I've been teaching this way for 15 years. Why would I change now? But we would. And I'm reading 2 books right now. One is called Control. I always call it Control Theory, but I always have to look at the cover of it. It's not near me right now. But I think that's the big thing is people want control. And I think that's my issue with having the boys have their shoes on the right feet or their shirt the right side out, or the parent telling the kid to use the boat the certain way, is we feel like we need to control the situation for whatever reason. So if I'm upset as a teacher because this student isn't paying attention to me, I need to control the situation instead of understand the situation. And, we still have teachers saying, and young teachers saying things that my teachers said when I was young. You sit in this confined area and you do this work and you do it the way I'm telling you to do it. And we don't like it. I like the way my son's learning math, but the one twin doesn't like the way he's learning math this year. And we have to have conversations with the teacher and say, does there have to be a timer? Does there have to be a buzzer that stresses him out? And I'm
Right.
almost sounding like, wimpy kid can't handle a buzzer, but that's my control. That's my control coming
Mhm.
out of me, is just like, suck it up, buttercup, let's go. You know, just do the best you can and push through. And when the buzzer goes off, you're done. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the whole control theory of things. We want to control things in our life and our education and our profession and our personal life. I think it's a control thing when it comes to education, that people don't want to go away from the traditional way of teaching. So the teacher who's been teaching for 20 years and lecturing for 20 years is very concerning to me, that they're not willing to stop lecturing for 45, 50 minutes at a time in a high school class and just relinquish control and allow the students to do the learning, instead of thinking you're going to deposit all that learning into their brain and they're going to retain it. So, but I think,
Yeah.
technology would be the answer. Technology use is going to help us do that. And I have a perfect example of a teacher who was that dude that likes to hear his voice. He teaches and lectures all day long. And then we've gone in and done this initiative in their district where we're meeting with each teacher and talking to them about certain technology. Well, now he loves these tools. He hated technology. Now he loves these tools we're showing him. And his strategy and his structure of his classroom has changed. So now he's doing some more group work and project work, and he allows the students to interact differently, to discover, so I think slowly but surely, like you said, little baby steps. But I think technology definitely can help us get there.
Yeah, well, and technology could help differentiate too, to
Mhm.
meet the needs of more learners.
Exactly. And you'd think that that would be more of a okay, acceptable thing for teachers to be, yes, but I'm in a lot of districts, and I'm talking about a very low percentage of teachers who are saying things like, "Well, why do I have to do that? That's more work for me if I have to differentiate." Well, it's easy to differentiate these days. And so it still surprises me when we hear young teachers not understanding that this student is at this level and this student's at this level, and we have to make a difference between that. We have to be okay
Right.
with that. Our job isn't to force this kid to be up here. It's to make sure this
Mhm.
kid keeps going and this kid doesn't fall behind, and just keep at it. That's what differentiation is. To kind of swing back around, maybe tie everything together, is that relationships are important, relevancy is important, and education is important. Education is the only thing that 100% of the population in the world is expected to be successful at. And we need to make that more of an important thing than it is. So we need to raise it up above some of these other things that don't include everybody in the world. But it is important that we educate people at the rate that they can, um, not burying them in the technology where they're just biding their time before they get out of school and then they can go on and do whatever the thing they want to do. This is our chance to allow them to learn what they need to learn to be successful at the story they want to create for their future. And all of that has to use technology because technology runs our world right now. So it is important, but we have to create the connection to be able to expand to that, to allow for the learning to happen.
Couldn't have said it better. Thank you,
You're
Tonya.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to our For the Love of EdTech podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today and learned something you can use with your own students. You can find the show notes, resources, and more at www.fortheloveofedtech.org.
For Love of EdTech is produced by SOITA, the Southwestern Ohio Instructional Technology Association, in partnership with Think TV and CET, the local PBS stations in Dayton and Cincinnati.